What do you know about Julio Foolio? Let's start from there. I think he's a piece of new footage of one of Fio's killers with the feds just dropped and it just blew the case wide open. Apparently the suspect straight up snitched by reenacting the killing right there in the interrogation room, starts walking around the interview room, and then he starts going. Then he walks around, and then he does it again. But here's the thing. He's not the only one talking to the feds. I've got the full breakdown, so let's get into it. The moment they told on themselves. The aftermath of Foolio's murder would prove that in 2024, there's nowhere to hide when the feds want you. The way these cats got snatched up told the whole story about how deep they were in it. Sean Gathright, Isaiah Chance, and Alicia Andrews were arrested in Jacksonville. But the streets were watching how each one of these players got caught slipping. The body camera footage from JSO showed these officers moving like they were conducting a military operation, not just arresting some corner boys. But real talk, Rashad Murphy's arrest was some next-level drama. Homie had the whole Collins Preserve apartments on lockdown, with SWAT teams and gang units surrounding the complex like they were taking down a kingpin. When Murphy finally came out with his hands up after hours of negotiation, you could tell this wasn't just some regular hood beef. This was federal time territory. Come on, come on. The most wanted man in Jacksonville had to be Davian Murphy, who managed to stay ghost for over 6 months before the streets finally closed in on him. Dave Murphy was arrested at a Label Street apartment in Jacksonville after 6 months on the run, with assistance from JSO's gang unit in the U.S. Marshal Service. But what this fool did in that interrogation room afterward, man, that's some kind of move that'll have defense attorneys crying in their sleep. Picture this. The detectives step out, thinking they're giving this man some time to think about his life choices. But instead of keeping his mouth shut like any seasoned street soldier would, Murphy decides to put on a whole performance. The detective who witnessed it broke it down in court like he was narrating a horror movie. He puts out his arms like this, and it appears that he's brandishing a rifle with one hand extended, and one, what I would consider the trigger finger. He starts walking around the interview room after he gets out of his seat. And this is after Detective Nether and I left. And he's holding it like this in front of him, and then he starts going. Then he walks around, and then he does it again. And he does it multiple times. This clown really thought he was alone, reenacting the whole drill like he was bragging to his homies on the block, but those cameras don't lie. And now the prosecution got him on tape, basically confessing to the whole operation. In the hood, we call that telling on yourself. And this fool did it better than any snitch ever could. The legal game that followed showed just how deep this gang war really went. Florida State Attorney Susan S. Lopez filed a motion to seek the death penalty for Chance, Gathright, and Rashad Murphy, but not for Andrews. When the state starts talking death penalty, you know they ain't playing around. They're trying to send a message to every young cat in the streets that this lifestyle leads to one place: a lethal injection table. The fact that Alicia Andrews got excluded from the death penalty motion had everybody in the hood talking. This girl was pregnant when she got locked up with a due date around February 2025. In Andrews' trial, originally scheduled for January 6, 2025, was postponed to August 18, 2025, after she waived her right to a speedy trial. In the streets, when somebody's case gets special treatment like that, it usually means they're singing like a canary to the Fed, said Alicia Andrews, who's the girl who's pregnant. She asked for a speedy trial, but the other 3 waived, right? Waived that? So, yeah, I guess that means she's cooperating now. She was at the party, and there's a video of her. But aside from Alicia and David, word on the street was that the rest of them had been cracking under pressure from day one. One of the guys, when they arrested him, I guess he had a gun to his head. Did you hear this whole story? Yeah, they said he was suicidal. Then he started talking about he wants to bring a Bible with him or some. These are all signs that things are going to go very bad for them. When a street soldier starts talking about bringing Bibles to jail and acting suicidal, that's hood code for I'm about to fold under pressure. Real gangsters don't move like that. They take their L's and keep their mouths shut. But these young cats weren't built for the heat that comes with federal charges. What made this case different from regular street beef was the federal involvement. Tampa Police Chief Lee Burkaw emphasized the involvement of federal partners, including the FBI and ATF in the investigation. When the Alphabet Boys step in, it's not just about solving one murder. They're trying to dismantle entire criminal organizations and send a message to every set in the city. The gang dynamics that started this whole bloody mess continued to play out in the courtroom like a real-life street movie. The investigation revealed that the murder was part of a long-standing feud between Johns' six-block gang and rival gangs. ATK's top killers in 1200? This wasn't just some random beef. This was a decade-long war that had already claimed dozens of lives in Jacksonville's most dangerous neighborhoods. The personal motivation behind the hit showed just how deep the street code really runs. Detectives testified that Murphy's family was personally affected by this rivalry as his cousin, Joe Rod Adams, was killed in 2018, an incident referenced in Foolio's songs, which Murphy reportedly resented. In the hood, when somebody your dead homie in a rap song, that's considered the ultimate violation, the kind that can only be answered with blood. Even facing the death penalty, some of these cats still couldn't accept their fate. Isaiah Chance's Instagram post showed he was still in denial about the mountain of evidence against him. He claimed that police had arrested the wrong people, alleging a lack of evidence, such as shell casings or footage of the shooters exiting the vehicle. But anybody who's been watching this case knows that straight cap, the evidence against these boys is overwhelming. The technology game that caught these fools was something straight out of a sci-fi movie. The surveillance footage, license plate readers, and digital communications created a web that no street-smart criminal could escape. So now, let's rewind. Because to understand how it spiraled this far, we've got to go back to where it all began. When the ops came for the birthday boy, June 23, 2024. That's a date that's forever etched in Jacksonville history. The day when Charles Jones, better known to the streets as Julio Foolio, was supposed to be celebrating another year of life, but instead got his ticket punched by some stone-cold killers who thought they had the perfect plan. But check this out. This ain't just another drill rapper getting caught slipping. This is about how the feds came through with that high-tech surveillance game and turned these wannabe hitmen's own moves against them. We're talking about a level of investigation that's straight out of a movie where every text, every post, every digital breadcrumb these cats left behind became evidence that would have them facing the needle. See, to really understand how deep this whole situation goes, we gotta dive into the trenches of Jacksonville politics. This city has been a war zone for years, with Jacksonville reportedly having over 100 gangs and the city's high poverty rates and systemic issues contributing to a culture where gang membership offers identity and protection. Foolio wasn't just rapping about the life, he was living it, breathing it, and unfortunately he died because of it. The young king was repping 6 Block Hard, also known as KTA Kill Them All, and they've been beefing heavy with their ops. A TK and 1200 for over a decade. This wasn't just territorial beef, this was personal. The feud between 6 Block KTA and a TK 1200, described as spanning over a decade, resulted in dozens of murders on both sides. This wasn't no rap beef that stays on wax bodies, been dropping left and right, and the street's been keeping score. What's your mental like right now? Well, of course I had my days. I had my on-off moments. Foolio's mama, Sandra Amaze, had been knowing this day might come. Shorty had been through it herself. Got hit with 8 shots in a related incident. She'd been begging her son to get out the game. But Fio was determined to keep it real with his music, no matter what the cost was going to be. The night everything went left was supposed to be nothing but good vibes. Foolio was posting up on the gram heavy, letting the whole world know where he was celebrating his born day. He had been advertising his birthday celebrations on Instagram, including a pool party at an Airbnb, and appearances at Tampa Club. But what the homie didn't realize was that his enemies were watching every story, screenshotting every location, and plotting some diabolical stuff. So, they knew everywhere he was at. They knew when they were at the B&B. They knew when they got to Tampa. The level of stalking these cats were doing was straight demonic. No cap. According to the streets and law enforcement, Isaiah Chance and Alicia Andrews were caught on camera, following Fio, with Chance using his phone to coordinate with Gathright, who was in a second vehicle. This wasn't no spur-of-a-moment street justice. This was some calculated military-type operation with scouts, shooters, and coordinators all playing their positions. These grimy individuals had driven damn near 3 hours from Jacksonville to Tampa using 2 whips, a silver Chevy Cruze, and a Chevy Impala. They rented an Airbnb, mapped out their routes, and were systematically tracking Foolio's every move while he was out here living his best life. He was completely unaware that death was lurking in the shadows. You really think y'all going to get away with it? Huh. Bro, they have the home surveillance video of one of the shooters where he's packing his car with the guns. But here's where these amateur hour criminals messed up big time. They left more evidence than a CSI episode. One of the suspects was captured on home surveillance video, packing his car with guns. They found bullets in that kid's house. They found one of the murder weapons. They found bullets matching from the shooting scene. These cats really thought they was smooth. But they were moving sloppy as hell the night of June 22nd, going into the early morning of the 23rd. Foolio was turned up in Tampa, posting videos, dropping his location like it was hot, celebrating with the squad. After police shut down the Airbnb event, he relocated to the Holiday Inn and home to suites where the shooting took place. This location switch was supposed to be a safety move, but it ended up being exactly what these killers needed to finish their dirty work. Right around 4:38 a.m. When Foolio and his people were getting ready to bounce from the hotel, these cowards struck with some serious precision. Surveillance footage from the hotel captured critical details of the attack, showing 3 shooters, dressed in black, wearing masks, and armed with 2 semi-automatic rifles and a pistol. The assault was brutal and efficient. Straight savage behavior. 3 masked gunmen fired over 30 rounds from a pistol and 2 AR-style rifles equipped with brass catchers. The fact they had brass catchers, those little devices that collect shell casings, showed these weren't just some corner boys with stolen straps. These cats understood the importance of not leaving ballistic evidence laying around. Driver, open the car door. Let me see your hands. Step on out. Step on out. Look away. Back up to the sound of my voice. Yep, stop right there. Lift your shirt. Up. But what these killers didn't anticipate was the type of heat that was about to come down on them. They thought they had executed the perfect lick, but they seriously underestimated the resources that were about to be deployed to hunt them down. This wasn't about to be just another unsolved homicide that gets filed away in some detective's cold case folder. The federal government was fixing to get involved. And when the Alphabet Boys step into the picture, the whole game changes. Well, it's not like they're going to get off for this, no. They got so much evidence against them. Like when you go through it, you can pretty much just pick a prison. Where do y'all want to go? The amount of evidence these cats left behind was absolutely wild. As one law enforcement expert put it, investigators had so much dirt on these suspects that they could pretty much just pick a prison for where they wanted to send them. But collecting all that evidence, analyzing it properly, and building a case that would stick required the type of resources and expertise that only federal agencies could bring to the table. Tampa Police Chief Lee Burko emphasized the involvement of federal partners, including the FBI and ATF, in the investigation. This wasn't just local boys in blue anymore. This was about to become a federal case involving interstate criminal activity, sophisticated weapons trafficking, the kind of digital forensics that would expose every mistake these killers made. The suspects thought their ski masks, their brass catchers, and their well-coordinated escape plan would be enough to keep them free. They were dead wrong about that. What they didn't understand was that in 2024, there ain't no such thing as the perfect crime. Every digital footprint, every license plate reader hit, every cell phone ping, every Cash App transaction creates a trail that skilled federal investigators can follow like bloodhound. They found bullets. They found bullets in that kid's house. They found one of the murder weapons. They found bullets matching from the shooting scene. This kid kept collectibles from the case, like mad inside of his house. What's really crazy is how one of these killers apparently kept collectibles from the murder scene. Investigators found bullets and weapons at his crib, like he was building his own little trophy case of evidence that would later be used to cook him in court. The story of how these killers got caught ain't just about solving a high-profile murder. It's about the evolution of criminal justice in the digital age, where federal agencies got access to tools and capabilities that would seem like straight science fiction just a few years back. These suspects had planned what they thought was some Ocean's 11 type operation. But they were about to learn that they brought knife-fighting tactics to a drone strike, as we're going to see. The federal investigation that followed would become a masterclass in modern law enforcement techniques, combining old-school detective work with next-level technology and unprecedented coordination between agencies that these killers never saw coming. Digital snitching. The final chapter of this whole saga is probably the most shocking part of all. It's not because of the violence itself, but because of how these killers' own attempts to be smart and calculated became the exact same evidence that federal investigators used to hunt them down and build an airtight case that got them facing the death penalty. Now, in this digital age, every move you make creates evidence. And these suspects learned that lesson the hardest way possible. They drove 3 hours, 2 separate cars. Is there still one person at large? Yes. Davon Adams. The scope of this conspiracy was absolutely wild. 5 individuals had driven approximately 3 hours from Jacksonville to Tampa, using multiple whips, coordinating through digital communications and executing what they believed was some masterpiece criminal operation. They were wrong on every single count. The suspects were Isaiah Chance, 21, Alicia Andrews, 21, Sean Gathright, 18, Rashad Murphy, 30, and Davian Murphy, 27. Each had a specific role in this operation. Andrews and Chance were the surveillance team tracking Foolio's movements and feeding intelligence to the shooters. Gathright and the 2 Murphys were the execution squad armed with rifles and handguns, ready to put in that work. Someone may even get the death penalty. Well, here's the thing. I don't know what people be thinking. But if that case doesn't tell you that it's almost impossible, if there's a popular series called How to Get Away with Murder, then you can't. The digital evidence that federal investigators uncovered was so comprehensive that it read like a step-by-step manual on how not to commit a crime in the modern era. Every digital interaction had created evidence, and federal agencies had the tools to analyze all of it with surgical precision. The surveillance footage was just the tip of the iceberg. Videos from Teasers and Truth's 18 lounges where Foolio made appearances showed suspects, Isaiah Chance and Alicia Andrews, following him. At Teasers, a Chevy Cruze linked to Chance and Andrews pulled up at 2:23 a.m., with Chance seen using a cell phone, likely coordinating with others. These cats had failed to account for just how deep surveillance had become in 2024. Modern whips, especially Teslas, are basically rolling security systems with multiple cameras that are constantly recording everything. Tesla surveillance video captured additional footage of the shooting, providing investigators with multiple angles and crystal clear footage that would have been impossible to obtain just a few years back. The guys walk in and out of the house, their own Ring camera. They subpoenaed the evidence. The guy who had the motive to do it? He thought he was being smart. Perhaps the most damning evidence came from these suspects' own security systems. One of the suspects was captured on home surveillance video, packing his car with guns, essentially creating his own evidence of premeditation. Ring cameras and other home security systems had become so common that these cats apparently forgot. They were constantly being recorded by their own equipment. I don't want to get caught. I'm going to leave my phone at home. But he uses other people's phones, so their phones are there. These suspects had apparently tried to be slick about avoiding digital detection, but their efforts backfired in the most spectacular way. Isaiah Chance and Alicia Andrews were identified as lookouts who tracked Jones to multiple locations in Tampa. Chance used Andrews' phone to communicate with the other suspects, sharing Jones's locations as they followed him. By using someone else's phone, they had simply created evidence on multiple devices instead of just one. The girl is already talking. The girl basically said, "Hey, I wasn't to use my phone here. I was just on the ride with my boyfriend." Alicia Andrews admitted to being at the scene but claimed she was lost and unaware of the murder plan. Federal investigators had access to her complete digital footprint, which told a completely different story than her weak claims of innocence. The license plate reader evidence was particularly devastating. License plate reader data helped track the two vehicles used by the suspects, a Chevy Cruze and a Chevrolet Impala, as they followed Foolio across Tampa. One suspect had even used his mama's whip, creating a direct family connection to the crime that investigators could easily trace. His mama said, "I ain't had that car, and my son had it." By the way, the guy who had the bullet fragments in the barrel connected to another shooting did the bullet cases in the barrel connected to another shooting. The crazy thing about him, he's 18 years old. The ballistic evidence revealed an even more disturbing picture of these young killers. Sean Gathright, only 18 years old, was linked to multiple shootings through ballistic evidence. The 9mm casings from the Tampa shooting matched casings from two prior incidents: a May 2024 homicide and an October 2023 shooting that investigators believe was an attempt on Jones's life. The transformation of these young people from children to stone-cold killers was particularly heartbreaking. Federal investigators had found evidence showing Gathright as a young child, innocent and normal, which made his evolution into someone connected to multiple homicides all the more tragic and disturbing. What happened in 5 years that this guy's a stone-cold killer? The federal investigation revealed that this wasn't just about one murder, but about a pattern of escalating violence involving very young perpetrators who would become killers before they were even old enough to drink legally. The streets had consumed these kids and turned them into something they probably never imagined they would become. The comprehensive nature of the evidence had opened up possibilities for much broader prosecutions that could shake up the entire Jacksonville gang scene. Federal agencies were now looking at RICO charges that could target whole gang organizations, not just the individual cats involved in this specific murder. The financial evidence was particularly damning, and these cats had left a digital paper trail that even a rookie investigator could follow. Rashad Murphy used his personal Cash App account to pay for the Airbnb in Tampa. Federal investigators had subpoenaed records from multiple financial platforms, creating a complete picture of how the conspiracy was funded and coordinated. The most incriminating evidence came from these suspects' own digital communications. And this is where they really snitched on themselves. A search warrant on Sean Gathright cloud account revealed incriminating messages sent from his phone on June 23rd after the shooting. One message attributed to a Murphy read, "I'm coming home. My thirst is quenched. Up a bottle of Don Julio." Today, Murphy, this wasn't just evidence of involvement. This was evidence of celebration, disrespect, and complete lack of remorse. These cats had used Foolio's own stage name as a taunt, demonstrating not just their guilt, but their absolute coldness about what they had done. Jacksonville detectives noted that sipping on Don Julio was a known, disrespectful phrase among gang members targeting Foolio. Even their attempts to be careful about finances had backfired spectacularly. When one suspect's whip didn't work, another had paid for expenses, creating additional financial trails that federal investigators could follow like breadcrumbs leading straight to their door. The transportation evidence was equally revealing and showed how these cats had underestimated modern surveillance. 3 suspects took an Uber back to Jacksonville and the driver identified them. Uber maintains comprehensive records of every ride, including GPS tracking, payment information, and often photos of passengers. What these suspects thought was anonymous transportation became another piece of evidence linking them directly to the crime scene. The arrests themselves demonstrated the overwhelming nature of the evidence that federal investigators had compiled. Sean Gathright, Isaiah Chance, and Alicia Andrews were arrested in Jacksonville. Chance and Andrews were apprehended at a home, while Gathright was caught at a shopping center. The body camera footage from the arrest showed suspects who knew their situation was absolutely hopeless. Rashad Murphy was arrested after a dramatic standoff at a Jacksonville apartment complex. JSO's gang and SWAT units surrounded the complex, evacuated residents, and negotiated with Murphy for hours before he surrendered. The final arrest demonstrated the federal agency's long-term capabilities and determination. Davon Murphy, the 5th suspect, remained at large for over 6 months until he was apprehended at a Jacksonville apartment complex with assistance from JSO's gang unit in the U.S. Marshal Service. Even extended evasion was ultimately futile when federal resources were focused on tracking down a fugitive. Legal consequences that followed reflected the strength of the federal evidence and the seriousness of the charges. All 5 suspects were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and for the shooters, attempted murder. The state of Florida has announced its intent to seek the death penalty against Chance, Gathright, and Rashad Murphy, but not Andrews, possibly indicating her cooperation. The federal investigation had exposed not just the details of this particular murder, but the broader ecosystem of gang violence, social media provocations, and street justice that had made it possible. These killers had used sophisticated planning and coordination, but they had been operating with an outdated understanding of how modern law enforcement works in the digital age. In 2024, federal agencies got access to digital forensics capabilities, interstate coordination, and analytical tools that make it virtually impossible to commit a complex crime and escape detection. Every phone call, every text message, every financial transaction, every location ping creates evidence that's skilled. Investigators can analyze and use to build comprehensive cases that will hold up in court. The streets will always remember Julio Foolio, but they'll also remember how his killers got caught. Not by digital trails, but by turning on each other and snitching to the feds. Alright, thanks for rocking with me. If you thought this video was wild, make sure you peep those other bangers showing up on your screen right now. They're just as fire. No cap, I'll catch you in the next video. Stay woke.